Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Part 154 based on novel. So let's start. The 20,000-man army that Juzi brought along with her this time were soldiers deployed from the north of the Sun Moon Empire. They were able to tolerate the cold well. However, many of them still suffered frostbite after coming here. Especially the 5,000 miners who were sent over here, their tolerance for cold was much worse. The soul masters among them fared better, as their bodies were stronger. However, there were not many soul masters among them. Most of them were ordinary people. They worked every day. Very soon, many of them couldn't hang on anymore, and some of them even died. The blizzard tonight was especially strong, and no one knew what the conditions would be tomorrow. Given this atrocious weather, their progress would likely be stalled even further. After hearing no news of Huayuhao, Juzi was actually very anxious. She wished that their mining operations would finish quickly, so that she could return to her actual base. On the one hand, she wanted to quickly execute her plan for the war. On the other hand, she also hoped that she could rely on the Sun Moon Empire's intelligence abilities to find out where Huayuhao was. Bitingly cold winds whizzed. The deafening sounds made it seem as if avenging spirits were whizzing instead. The soul lamps in the commander's tent flickered even more intensely, and even more depressions appeared around the commander's tent. It's even stronger now. Weird noises started to sound around the tent. Juzi suddenly focused her gaze, and seemed to have thought of something. She quickly charged towards the opening of the tent and drew the curtains. Suddenly, countless ice flakes flew in. These ice flakes carried a strong sense of chill and sharpness. Juzi subconsciously lifted her hands before she poured out her soul power, which formed a protective barrier around her. However, even so, the ice flakes still managed to cause ripples to form after piercing the barrier around her. "It's damaged," Juzi commented, and immediately unleashed her protective soul barrier. She was also a seven-ringed soul sage. After unleashing her protective soul barrier, she ignored the raging blizzard in the sky and immediately leaped up. She flew tens of meters into the air. She was immediately stunned when she saw what was going on. The blizzard was raging throughout the entire base. The snowflakes, that resembled icy blades, were also scattered everywhere, and covered the entire base. The leather tents of the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legions were still fine, they weren't really damaged yet. However, the other ordinary tents were already starting to tear because of the snowflakes. Tragic screams were already sounding. The ordinary soldiers couldn't possibly resist the ice flakes, which were like sharp knives. "Enemy attack!" Juzi shouted, and lifted her right hand. An orange-red beam of light immediately shot into the sky. Patches of orange-red light exploded amidst the blizzard. Juzi's red armor shone, and a barrier formed around her. Orange-red figures started to appear from the perimeter of the base, and beams of orange-red light also started to gather in the air. They formed a layer of red barriers that started to expand as they resisted the blizzard. There were 400 soul engineers in the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion, and there were some reserve members. This placed the size of the entire legion at around 500 soul engineers. They quickly rose into the sky under Juzi's signal. Linked defensive soul tools were unleashed, forming a barrier to resist the brutal attacks of the blizzard. Juzi clearly knew that this blizzard wasn't a natural phenomenon. No matter how strong a natural blizzard was, it was only very snowy and windy. The snowflakes couldn't be so sharp, and they wouldn't contain undulations of ice elements either. Without a doubt, this had to be someone's doing. "Yuhao, is it you?" After unleashing the linked defensive soul tools, the first thing that surfaced in Juzi's head was Huayuhao. However, she soon rejected that assumption. The reason was very simple: this blizzard was simply too strong. Everything around had been covered by this blizzard, and it was damaging everything. No matter how talented Huayuhao was in terms of his ultimate ice, he was still a soul sage. A soul sage couldn't possibly demonstrate such terrifying abilities. Juzi even felt that this couldn't possibly be the doing of a single soul master. Whether it was in terms of military matters or soul tools, Juzi was very intelligent. However, everyone had their flaws and shortcomings, and she wasn't an exception. Her greatest shortcoming was that she wasn't a strong soul master. She wasn't a strong soul master, but was a pure soul engineer instead. The strongest soul masters that she had fought were the evil soul masters from the Holy Ghost Church, which she actively avoided. This was why she wasn't able to deduce the cultivation of a soul master needed to produce such a brutal blizzard. Or rather, she couldn't tell the number of soul masters needed to produce this blizzard. Don't tell me that the Heavenly Soul Empire or Doling Empire actually have a strong soul master legion. However, no matter how strong this blizzard was, it couldn't shake the linked defense of the entire Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion. However, the linked defense formed by 500 soul engineers still had a limit. Their defense couldn't possibly protect the entire base. After all, the base had to be big enough to contain 25,000 people. They could only protect 1/3 of the base. This was their limit. After stabilizing the formations, Juzi immediately descended and continued to give out commands. She didn't command the soldiers to retreat to this 1/3 of the base. Given how terrifying the blizzard was, the ordinary soldiers would be torn apart the moment they exposed themselves outside. She immediately gave the order for everyone to hide under their beds and cover their bodies with their blankets. Even though there would still be many casualties this way, she only hoped that this unnatural blizzard wouldn't last for too long. If that was the case, the number of casualties could be minimized. Juzi's solution was undoubtedly the best they could do right now. Such a strong blizzard was unnatural. In her opinion, it couldn't last long. However, her expression still changed after she settled the soldiers in the base. She knew that they had lost this battle, even though it had only just begun. Most of the soldiers were hiding underneath their beds and temporarily avoiding the blizzard. However, the other 2/3 of the base had already been torn to pieces. It couldn't contain anyone any longer. She had 25,000 men with her, and it was already very cramped. It was impossible to contain everyone within the remaining 1/3 of the base. This meant that their original plan couldn't be completed even if this blizzard ended soon, and even if there weren't too many casualties, it would be greatly delayed. Moreover, many people would certainly be hurt or killed. Even the machines that were used to mine the rare metals would be greatly damaged. This blizzard was simply overwhelming. In addition, Juzi couldn't even find her target. If she wasn't able to lock onto her opponent and find out where this blizzard was coming from, she naturally had no way of dealing with it. Can't find my opponent? As she thought until here, Juzi's expression turned even grimmer. She subconsciously lifted her head and peered into the sky. All she saw was the blizzard that was raging in the pitch-black night sky. That's it. The aerial surveillance soul tools will be greatly damaged in this blizzard. Or rather, the other party's original plan. As she thought until here, Juzi gritted her teeth extremely hard. A scheme? This is obviously a scheme. The other party obviously knows that even if I find out that their plan is to destroy our aerial surveillance soul tools, I won't be able to command my soul engineers to leave the base, given the blizzard. This base is our foundation. We have so many soldiers here. Even if they choose to retreat, there wouldn't be enough tents. We'll still sustain heavy losses. This is why we have to protect our base. This gives them enough time to destroy our aerial surveillance soul tools. Juzi's deductions were all right. Huiyuhao was on the Ice Bear King's back right now as he searched for the aerial surveillance soul tools at the boundaries of the blizzard. As he had checked them earlier, he had already memorized the positions of these aerial surveillance soul tools. As for those that were within the blizzard, he didn't have to worry at all. The closer this blizzard was from the ground, the larger the area it covered. However, its actual strength would diminish. When it was in the air, its destructive strength would be even greater. Those aerial surveillance soul tools were also not very tough. Given the strength of this blizzard, they would definitely be destroyed. The Ice Bear King had once questioned Huiyuhao. He told Huiyuhao that the destructive strength of his blizzard would be several times greater if it was unleashed at a lower altitude. The enemy would certainly suffer much greater losses. However, Huiyuhao stopped him from doing so. The reason was simple. He didn't want to use this blizzard to deal with the enemy. Given the overall abilities of Ju and her Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion, a blizzard was unable to truly hurt them. Once the region covered by this blizzard became smaller, she might have some way of dealing with it, since she was so intelligent. Furthermore, the most important point was that Hui Yuhao didn't want to kill too many ordinary soldiers. They were innocent, just ordinary people. War and invasions were the results of their ruler's orders. This was why Hui Yuhao's main intention was to disrupt the Sun Moon Empire's plan, not to kill people. Also, he was the only one who knew deep down in his heart that he was afraid of hurting Ju. It was the truth that this blizzard was very effective. The ground shook tremendously, and the Sun Moon Empire's army was in a great state of confusion. Even though Ju's orders were very appropriate, she couldn't possibly deal with Hui Yuhao right now. The raging blizzard was also slightly weakened at Hui Yuhao's request, but this made it possible for it to last longer. It was long enough for all the aerial surveillance soul tools to be dealt with. The blizzard soon covered a smaller region. However, the parts of the Sun Moon Empire's base that were exposed were already completely destroyed. The strength of the icy blades was limited, but that was only for soul masters. To ordinary people, they were still very lethal. Even though the strength of the blizzard was already greatly reduced at Hui Yuhao's request, there were still many soldiers who were unable to get out from underneath their beds. Ju looked very grim right now. She maintained the linked defensive formation, which greatly drained their soul power. The icy blades weren't too strong, but it was difficult for them to maintain their positions amidst the blizzard. In just a short time, all the soul engineers had to replenish their soul power with a milk bottle each. More importantly, this blizzard greatly dampened the soldiers' morale. At this moment, a roar sounded from afar. Ju clearly saw a figure that was charging towards the base rapidly. This figure didn't come closer to the base, but started causing damage around the perimeter. The figure looked to be that of a human, but its strength was extremely terrifying. The tremendous sounds of destruction started to reverberate. Small Team 1, take care of him. Ju commanded. She still didn't remove the linked defense formation. At this moment, she had to be more prudent in dealing with this unknown enemy. There were 10 soul engineers in one small team of the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion. Each of them was led by a Class 6 soul engineer, while the rest were all Class 4 soul engineers. 10 soul engineers were rapidly charging towards the person who was causing destruction to the foundational structures around the base. Beams of soul rays also shot towards him. They didn't use any soul cannons, which would be more destructive, to preserve the foundational structures. However, they were shocked to see that the person didn't avoid their attacks at all. When the scorching soul rays struck him, they didn't even create ripples. They just disappeared. That person didn't seem to feel anything at all either. After this, they saw something shocking. That person stood in front of a thick metal pillar. It was one of the many metal pillars that Hui Yuhao saw the Sun Moon Empire drill into the ground. Each pillar was 50 meters long, and they were forged from special alloys. As this person exerted force, he actually managed to pierce through one of the pillars. Following this, he lifted it up, and swept this pillar towards the small team of soul engineers, as if he were trying to kill flies. The leading soul engineer was shocked. It was pertinent to note that each of the metal pillars weighed more than 5,000 kilos. Was that a weight that a human could lift? Even if they were hit by only the edge of this metal pillar, it would still be enough to crush them. Disperse! The 10 soul engineers quickly dispersed, which prevented them from being killed. However, that person didn't seem to care whether he hit them. In his hands, the pillar seemed to be very light and free. Then, he forcefully smashed the pillar against a huge rack at his side. The rack was greatly damaged before it started to collapse. A huge drill that was attached to it slanted, and was about to fall off. The price of such a drill was around 1 million gold soul coins. Is he really a human? This was the thought in all of the soul engineers' heads right now. Even Ju was stunned when she saw this. Can a human really be so strong? At this point, that person turned around. He grabbed the metal pillar tightly with both hands before he started to spin around. He looked like a giant spinning top, while the metal pillar was like the sharp point of this spinning top. It was extremely terrifying. This was definitely more terrifying than the blizzard earlier. The surrounding structures were all destroyed as this metal windstorm swept by. Juzi could no longer remain composed anymore. She shouted, "Large teams 1 and 2, enter the formation and attack with heavy cannons. Teams 3 and 4, prepare to maintain the linked defensive barrier." The Soul formation of the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion was in the center of the base. This was the plan all along. All the large Soul tools were contained within this formation. There were even several Class 9 Soul tools there. From this brief encounter, she had already concluded that this extremely powerful man had to be at least a transcendent Dolor. Fighting a transcendent Dolor was not something 1 or 2 people could do. As she recalled the blizzard earlier, she realized that the enemy's strength couldn't be estimated at all. The only way they could deal with their attacks was to use their linked defense in tandem with their Soul formation. Without a doubt, it was right of her to do this. However, it was at this moment that the Fire Phoenix Dolor was stunned. She peered into the sky and asked, "Legion Commander, take a look." "What's that?" Juzi subconsciously lifted her head to take a look, and was stunned. A ball of icy-blue light was becoming brighter and brighter in the sky. This ball of light seemed to have covered the entire sky, as if the moon had suddenly fallen from the heavens. It was crashing down on them. The aura of this ball of light was so overwhelming that they felt as if they were being completely suppressed just by looking at it. "It's too scary." "What is it?" "Quick, let's gather our full strength and attack the sky." Juzi gave out an order without any further hesitation. She also quickly went to retrieve soul cannons and fired them towards the sky. At this moment, a loud boom caused Juzi's body to shake slightly. The entire linked defense formation started to waver. Many of the Soul Engineers didn't even hear her orders clearly. Although 200 Soul Engineers had left for the Soul formation, there were still 300 Soul Engineers maintaining this linked defense formation. But it still shook tremendously. This showed how powerful the enemy's attack was. Juzi turned, and all she saw was a huge metal pillar being deflected away. She suddenly understood what was going on. The person who had unleashed the metal windstorm earlier had thrown the metal pillar towards them. The metal pillar was almost 50 meters long, and it was unleashed with great force because of the high-speed rotation earlier. No wonder the impact force was so terrifying. Even though they were protected, some of the Class 4 Soul Engineers turned pale. Some of them were even hurt, and spat out blood. This momentary delay allowed the huge icy-blue ball to get closer and closer. It was as if a giant mountain were going to crash down on them. At this moment, the teams that were supposed to enter the Soul formation had yet to get into position. "Attack! Quick, attack towards the sky! Don't bother with that person below!" Juzi shouted. Her soul cannon had already been fired. Although she didn't know what that huge light ball was, she could clearly sense that the entire Soul formation would be destroyed if it was allowed to crash down. At this moment, ordinary soldiers were completely useless. Even as the commander of the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion, she also felt helpless. The Fire Phoenix Dolor had remained close to Juzi, and she now lifted her hands. As a light flashed, she retrieved a golden-red object from her storage-type soul tool. It was a weird soul tool in the shape of a phoenix. This soul tool wasn't very large. However, it exuded scorching heat the moment it appeared. The golden-red light that emanated from it also brightened their surroundings. This fire phoenix was very exquisite. Its eyes were like rubies, and looked very real. It felt as if it were a real phoenix. The Fire Phoenix Dolor wore a serious expression on her face as she slowly lifted it up. Following this, her figure flashed, and she exited the linked defense formation. Intense fiery red light was released from her body as her soul rings appeared. Her fiery wings were unleashed, and the fiery light started to gather towards the soul tool in her hands. The Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion demonstrated its strength at this moment. The 300 Soul Engineers in the sky quickly unleashed their attacks under Juzi's command. 300 beams of fiery red light shot out. They gathered in the air and charged straight towards the ball of light. Since they could link their defenses, they could naturally link their attacks too. This was why the Sun Moon Empire was so scary. Loud booms resonated through the air. The huge icy-blue ball shook slightly, but started to shine even more brightly. It continued to crash down, although it was slightly slower now. The ladies from the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion were shocked when they saw this scene. Their linked offensive soul tools were known for being unstoppable. There were a few hundred of them. Even though they were just using class for scorching rays, their combined attack was still very powerful. Of course, the low temperature of the ice plains of the extreme north slightly diminished the effect of these scorching rays. However, what exactly was that falling light? How was it able to resist the rays? It was completely unbelievable. Juzi was a little similar to Huiyu Hao. In a crisis, she was able to maintain her composure. She knew that she had to stop the ball from falling. It had to be very strong if it could resist so many scorching rays. Once it crashed down, their soul formation was bound to be destroyed. If she could hang on until their soul formation took effect, they wouldn't need to fear anymore. A Soul Engineer Legion was most terrifying in the soul formation that it created. However, giant snowballs started to be rapidly flung over from the perimeter of the base at this moment. Wherever they passed, all the mining machines were quickly destroyed. The burly man who flung the metal pillar earlier also looked into the sky and roared. His body started to balloon in size. In just a matter of seconds, Juzi watched him grow to a height of more than 120 meters. The Titan Snow Devil King had a reputation for having the strongest body in the continent, and he didn't earn it from nothing. Soul Masters and Soul Engineers weren't unfamiliar with soul beasts. However, this was the first time the Soul Engineers from the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion had seen such a massive soul beast. The Titan Snow Devil King roared into the sky and crouched down slightly before leaping up. His huge figure was like a cannon shell as he collided with the linked defensive barrier in the sky. At the same time, the giant snowballs were already hitting them from all directions now. Boom! The linked defensive barrier shook tremendously, and all the soul engineers within it turned extremely pale. The Fire Phoenix Dolor was also stunned for a moment. She was also slightly delayed from firing her soul tool. The Fire Phoenix Dolor could tell how strong the Titan Snow Devil King was the moment he revealed his true size. She wasn't a pure soul master, but she had some understanding of soul beasts. If he could transform into a human, he had to be a savage beast. He's definitely a soul beast. This is not a martial soul true body unleashed by a soul master. A martial soul true body is an energy body, but this is definitely his true form. There was one savage beast to their side, and there was a ball of terrifying light descending from above. Which one should they choose to resist? Sky. Juzi made the decision for the Fire Phoenix Dolor. At this moment, she tried to calm herself as she faced the immense Titan Snow Devil King. The aerial threat directly threatened the soul formation below. Although the Titan Snow Devil King was strong, the soul formation could still resist him if it was deployed perfectly. As one of the strongest soul engineer legions of the Sun Moon Empire, Juzi was confident that they could deal with any problems that arose once they unleashed their full fighting strength. The Fire Phoenix Dolor shouted and exerted strength with both hands as she pushed up. As a sonorous phoenix roar sounded, a fire phoenix was actually released from her hands. It fluttered its phoenix wings and flew towards the plummeting ball of light. This was a powerful Class 9 soul tool that the Fire Phoenix Dolor had personally created. It was called Soaring Phoenix and was a pure offensive soul tool. It could reach a temperature of over 1,000 degrees Celsius and possessed great explosive strength. It could only be used once before it became useless, but it was much more powerful than most ordinary Class 9 stationary soul cannon shells. However, its shortcoming was that it couldn't reach as far as a stationary soul cannon shell. However, it was very suitable for usage within a fixed region. The Titan Snow Devil King was slightly stunned when he saw the Fire Phoenix rising into the sky. Although it wasn't flying towards him, he could still sense the immense soul power undulations it emitted. Can a human really unleash such an attack? That human isn't that strong either. Huiyu Hao mentioned that humans are capable of inventing weapons. This must be one of them. It's indeed strong. Originally, the Tang Snow Devil King had looked down on humans. However, his opinion slowly changed when he realized that his previous two attacks couldn't topple the linked defensive barrier, and after he saw the rising fire phoenix. The huge ball in the sky was only 500 meters from the ground now. At this moment, the soaring phoenix blew apart, and received its attack. Blue and fiery red formed two parallel lines in the air. These parallel lines expanded suddenly, and a region covering hundreds of square kilometers was instantly engulfed by these two colors. Ice and fire raged as they battled with each other. It was also at this moment that the Soul Engineers of the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion finally entered their soul formation, and started to control their large offensive soul tools. Between ice and fire, fire was evidently being drained more quickly. After all, this was the ice plains of the extreme north. In this extremely cold part of the world, all fire-type abilities were greatly diminished. This process was even continuous. It was at this moment that a ball of icy blue light suddenly drilled out from the fire and instantly crashed down, landing directly within the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion soul formation. When it hit the ground, the light dispersed, revealing a figure. Wasn't he Hu Yuhao? When Hu Yuhao landed, his body immediately turned illusory. The huge figure that had descended from the sky earlier was naturally the Ice Bear King. Hu Yuhao had already guessed that the Phoenix Soul Engineer would have some way of tackling him, given their abilities. At the same time, he was also adapting to the situation. Everything, including the Tang Snow Devil King and the Tang Snow Devil's attacks, was under his control. A white halo immediately spread after he concealed his body with his imitation. At the same time, a golden whirlpool appeared above the Fire Phoenix Dolor's head. They were his third and fourth soul skills, mass enfeeblement and spiritual confusion. In terms of cultivation, Hu Yuhao couldn't compare to the Fire Phoenix Dolor. However, his immense spiritual power could compare to a titled Dolor. Under the effect of his spiritual soul core, he unleashed two soul skills. Suddenly, the Fire Phoenix Dolor was sent into a momentary trance. Within this soul formation, all the soul engineers felt as if their soul power had leaked out of their bodies. A strong sense of weakness quickly caused them to turn dizzy. After Hu Yuhao's mass enfeeblement, a huge vertical eye appeared at the center of the soul formation, and the space within the soul formation immediately distorted. Clearly no sound was made, but every soul engineer felt as if deafening thunder had sounded in their ears. Hu Yuhao unleashed his martial soul true body, the demonic eyes of the Azura, along with his spiritual blast. A few spiritual-type soul skills were unleashed simultaneously. All the soul engineers from the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion staggered after being hit by Hu Yuhao's spiritual blast. Hu Yuhao didn't unleash the full power of his spiritual blast because he wanted to maximize the area it covered. Otherwise, some of the soul engineers who were closest to him would have been blown apart from the blast. Hu Yuhao stomped the ground with his right foot before the star anise mysterious ice grass surfaced above his head. Following this, the ground shook, and countless ice spikes formed a dazzling icy flower with Hu Yuhao's body at the center. It was the star anise omnithrust. Under the enhancement of the star anise mysterious ice grass, the star anise omnithrust was unleashed with full force. The soul engineers all had automated protective barriers on their bodies. They were only flung away from the star anise omnithrust, but the soul formation that was deployed wasn't protected by a defensive barrier. Or rather, without any soul engineers controlling it, there was no way the soul formation could be protected. The soul tools in this formation were rather tough. Even when hit by the star anise omnithrust, only small parts of them were damaged. However, they were all knocked over by the impact. Hu Yuhao's series of attacks didn't cause too much harm to the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion. However, it caused the soul formation to be completely suppressed. When Juzi saw that huge vertical eye, she already knew who was here. Hu Yuhao was simply too quick. After he unleashed his spiritual blast, he returned to his original form almost instantly. When he stomped with his right leg, he was just looking at her. After this, countless ice spikes were unleashed. Around the perimeter, several massive figures changed into their original forms after a series of collisions. The powerful Tang Snow Devils had already charged into the base with the help of the blizzard and Hu Yuhao. Huiyuhao stood arrogantly in the center of the Soul Formation. When Juzi finally gritted her teeth and gave the order to all the Soul Engineers to focus their attacks on Huiyuhao, another huge figure fell from the sky, shielding him. A giant ice wall absorbed all the attacks. At this moment, these Soul Engineers couldn't even think about attacking Huiyuhao without their soul tools. Huiyuhao remained where he was. On his forehead, his Eye of Destiny had already opened. Sunray patterns filled his forehead. Right now, he was at the center of the battlefield. Whether it was the Ice Bear King, the Titan Snow Devil King or the Titan Snow Devils, they were all within range of his spiritual detection sharing. The entire battlefield had been completely engulfed by his spiritual detection. Every Titan Snow Devil was under his command, including the Titan Snow Devil King. The Titan Snow Devils didn't kill the ordinary soldiers. Instead, they were furiously destroying all the structures. All the facilities that the Sun Moon Empire had tirelessly built to mine rare metals were torn apart under the hands of these Titan Snow Devils. Metal pieces were flying everywhere. It took the Soul Engineers in the Soul Formation some effort before they shook off the effects of Huiyuhao's mass enfeeblement, spiritual blast and star anise omnithrust. By then, they discovered that they couldn't do anything at all. The Ice Bear King released a strong, chilly aura from his body as he stood within the Soul Formation. All the soul tools were quickly being frozen. Huiyuhao was already showing mercy. After all, the Soul Engineers in the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion were female. If he had followed his attacks up with his ice explosion technique, those who were of lower cultivations would have been critically hurt. However, he didn't want to kill too many people, which stopped him from doing that. All the soul tools were just frozen under the control of the Ice Bear King. The Soul Engineers could only quickly flee in all directions. They were all scattered from one another. Even if they could attack, how could they possibly threaten the Ice Bear King? Juzi turned slightly pale. When Huiyuhao led the Ice Bear King to occupy the Soul Formation, she knew that she had already lost this battle. Without the Soul Formation, she couldn't possibly threaten the Titan Snow Devils even if she could survive. These Titan Snow Devils were simply too scary. Class 4 and 5 soul tools were ineffective against them. Their destructive abilities had even destroyed all the mining facilities in and around the base. These Titan Snow Devils had massive limbs and sharp claws. Even the tough metals seemed like paper in front of them. Right now, more than 100 Titan Snow Devils were gathering towards the center. The Titan Snow Devil King had even grabbed another thick metal pillar and smashed it against the linked defensive formation in the air. Juzi gritted her teeth and couldn't help but think, this fellow is heartless. I've been worrying over him for so long, but he's brought me such a huge surprise with his return. Huiyuhao naturally didn't know what Juzi was thinking about. Things had reached such a stage that the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion was clearly unable to clean up the mess anymore. Huiyuhao flipped up and jumped onto the Ice Bear King's back. The Ice Bear King roared into the sky. Countless ice picks danced in the air and shot straight towards the linked defensive formation. The Ice Bear King turned around quickly and charged away with Huiyuhao on his back. He's leaving? He's leaving just like that? Juzi was stunned. When she saw the frozen soul formation on the ground, she heaved a sigh of relief. Although they had suffered heavy losses this time, they had still managed to preserve their soul formation. This meant that she still had a chance of making a comeback. However, this thought only lasted for a second before she was brought back to the harsh realities of life. Tremendous booms started resonating through the air. Explosions sounded from the soul formation one after another. The huge soul tools were blown apart, and debris scattered in the air. Bits of metal flew everywhere, and the core formation blew apart, causing an even louder explosion. The entire soul formation seemed as if it had been ignited as it kept on exploding. Ice explosion technique. This video will end here.